about today?
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. We haven't been able to do the HHR for 2 years because of COVID, and I was unsure about the turnout, but as it got longer in the week, the traffic on the website, traffic on Facebook page started picking up, and I'm absolutely thrilled. We have hundreds and hundreds of veterans here today as part of the group, so I mean, we're looking at maybe 1,500 bikes, maybe 2,000, and a good percentage of them are veterans. And I'm so thrilled that because they're part of this. This is, you know, the inspiration was their work and what they do. So I'm thrilled.
Why was this started, and when was it started, and how has that evolved?
Well, it was came from an idea in 2008 when we were welcoming home our 98th, 99th and 100th soldier from Afghanistan. And I was standing on the bridge like so many people because it was Christmas time, and I said, wow, this is tremendous outpouring of love and, you know, respect and all that for these families, but what about the ones that continue to serve? What about the the men and women who have served and been injured? You know, where's their flag draped bridges? Where's their recognition? So I wanted to do something like special for them, and I started the ride in 2009.
Evolved since, and had it every except for the COVID years, but I mean it's been heartwarming.
It's been a good success, but it's basic, it's simple in its idea, and I haven't wavered from that. Focal point of this is about the troops, and I made it free, and you know, we got great communities like Port Hope and Trenton that welcome us in and make us feel at home, and it just builds the atmosphere. So this is a great opportunity for Canadians to come together and show their support for the troops, their families, and you know, we recognize, especially now that COVID's over, all the sacrifices of everybody that was, you know, became essential workers and all, you know, frontline healthcare workers and all of those people that really are unsung heroes, even the truck drivers. This is the time that we can step out and say, hey, thank you.
Run around like you're lost.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Looks like they got cool. Get some good shots of that paper.
To the mayor.
I don't know if I could handle this. This might be excitement.
My girlfriend drives the exact same bike.
Seriously?
She's 5'2".
Oh, this is a big. Seriously, same height?
Exact same bike, except it's in white.
Holy, this is sweet.
How do you find the balance? Like, is it?
There, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I kind of found myself a nice little world. Yeah. I have a new granddaughter. She's a new face. Oh, yeah, well, Well, she was born in St. John's. She's only been there. They're just there for my son's got a 1-year residency in St. John's, and then they're back to Regina. She's still there, my daughter, and that granddaughter is Anne.
As a military town, they appreciate what we're doing. A special thanks also to OPP, Port Hope Police, Cooney Transport, and all that they did for helping us get on. I'm honored, and it's a never-ending privilege to introduce the next gentleman. You all know him. He's a silver tongue. He's amazing. And I've been honored to have him as a friend, and it was
perfect. I'd like to start out by congratulating all the riders. That was the smoothest ride I've seen in years, and it seems like it's been a little while since we've done that. That was a beautiful experience today, wasn't it? Yeah. Fantastic. I want to thank Lou and his committee and all the folks in Port Hope for making this happen. We've just come out of a long, dark tunnel, it feels like. As motorcyclists, we understand what cabin fever is. Towards the end of February, we all start getting kind of itchy. By the time March, April comes, we're right wound tight. This COVID situation has done the same to the whole world. The whole world is wrapped tight. So when Lou brought us back here, which is what he and Brian Stacey do so well here in Ontario and in Port Hope, a bunch of us rode out from the East Coast, and I just rode in from the Maritimes, and I was riding in with two comrades from the cab organization, Earl Eastman and Red Hat, and both Afghanistan veterans from the war in Afghanistan. And at every stop as we rolled along, I'm reminded of how important that highway is out there, that highway of heroes, that us Heroes Highway ride go down. It's hard to ride by Mark Leger's house out in Lancaster. Dear friend killed April the 17th, 2002, when a 500-pound bomb changed the war, changed the mission for Canada, changed sacrifice and service for the people of Canada, changed everything. I went to that very first repatriation when the 4 came home, 8 seriously wounded and 4 in caskets. There were 15,000 people up the road in Trenton. I went to Petawawa for the next service. I went out west for Edmonton. There was 25,000 people at the garrison in Edmonton and 15,000 Petawawa. And I was talking to the guys, Mark, that was A Company, 3 BPCLI, Jump Company. That was my unit. Those were my friends. And as we're standing around with all the fellows who'd been over there with them, they told me there's more to come. They told me it's going to get worse. And it hit me. If it gets worse, and if this goes on for years, God forbid, are we going to get this kind of a turnout for the fall and every single time? As the numbers get higher and the years go on, are 15,000 people going to come to Trenton? Are going to be 25,000 in Garrison, Edmonton? Are they going to have 15 to 25,000 up in the community center in Petawawa and in Pembroke? The next year, I met a veteran on the road, Doc LeBrun, who'd been through the fighting in the Medak Pocket, and he was a motorcyclist and an enthusiast, and we bonded together on a Ride for Daddy event, and we created the CAV, the Canadian Army Veterans Motorcycle Organization. I was put into a unique position. As its national president, I rode across Canada supporting events like this. I've attended over 1,500 in the last 19 years. Next year's our 20th anniversary. But the part that makes this road sacred to me was during the war in Afghanistan, I physically attended 150 of the repatriations. Our organization never missed a single one. The 8 I missed, 159 fell during that war that were on strength. 158 came back to Trenton. Every single time that happened, I'd be riding across Canada doing my stuff with the cab in Vancouver Island or Newfoundland. And I'd ride into a community and I'd start seeing flags at half-mast. I'd get sick to my stomach, turn on the radio from the rock and roll and listen to the news about someone else who's fallen. Wherever I was, I'd turn and I'd make my way back to Trenton. The 8 I missed was because I was too far deep in the Newfoundland or too far deep in the Vancouver Island, couldn't safely make the ferry to get back. But 5 times I left the Tsawwassen ferry at White Bay, rode 3 days straight through to Trenton, no sleep, fuel, Red Bull, coffee, get to Trenton and watch them bring my friends home. And at the Trenton end, I did 75. I did 75 downtown Toronto at the coroner's office. The Trenton end was different. We'd stand on the 401 highway outside for years watching the military go by, planes flying by. To get into that corridor of number 2 highway by 8 Wing is hard to do. It's a narrow corridor. And with all the confusion of the repatriations and the press and all the stuff that happened during those years, people would make their way down towards number 2 highway until the OPP started realizing all these veterans and motorcyclists and Legion groups and people who wanted to be there. And if the families were willing, we were allowed to stand down there. There was a few that we weren't allowed to be there. They didn't want the press involved. But every other time we were allowed to be there, which was the majority of the times, we'd stand in front of that chain link fence. The OPP would escort our bikes in and we'd line up in the east lane and we'd block it entirely. And we'd stand up against the fence and we'd wait for that plane to land, or more than one plane. They'd unload the cargo, that precious cargo, and we watched the families over and over and over again going up and accepting the remains of their son or daughter. And the people that we're standing with in Trenton at that fence, people who had no connection to the military, people who've been driving down the highway and heard the plane was coming and felt it in their heart to show up, felt it in their insides to support the families of the fallen. Veterans, of course, community members, Legion, cadet corps, groups. And then as the casket was loaded into the hearses and as they made their way off 8 Wing, they would turn onto highway number 2 and we would all move on to the pavement. Hundreds of people, thousands. I should have never feared that nobody would show up and support the fallen and the families. Every single repatriation, we started seeing people standing on the pavement, and as those limousines and hearses went by, you see the mothers inside holding a photograph. You'd see them weeping and drawing strength from people who are just silently standing there, not wanting to be seen for anything but to be there to support the families. And then they'd go down the highway of heroes. And I've spoken to many of them. We have Silver Cross family members with us here today. I don't have an idea in my head, a fraction of what it must feel like to be a mom, a dad, or father, or a brother, or sister, a comrade, watching your friend going down the highway, your blood go down the highway in an aluminum transit casket. But I have an idea what it was like for them because of events like this, the Highway of Heroes event. Because as we ride down that Highway of Heroes now, on the Heroes Highway ride, we see people on those bridges, my heart starts to beat faster. I start to realize that even though I'm a crippled up old soldier, somebody out there cares. There was people that saw us this morning when we left Trenton, and there's you folks here with us here in Port Hope, showing us that you care. I'll never forget Darlene Cushman, whose son Daryl Caswell was killed by an IED with the Dragoons. She put a rose on his casket as it left Trenton. As she went by all our motorcycles, the rose was on top of the casket, and she was terrified because of the silk that it might slide off on the trip down the Highway of Heroes. It didn't. It stayed on top of that casket all the way down. And all she remembers is focusing on that rose. And at one point, though, she told me she did remember an odd kind of a thing. Her daughter Jolene reached out, touched her on the knee and said, "Mom, is that what I think it is?" And as they were going under the overpass in Beaumont, there was an elephant standing on his hind legs with a Canadian flag on his back. So that Highway of Heroes out there is sacred to all of us. The other end was hard duty at the Toronto coroner's office. The 75 I witnessed there, all of us from away, all the motorcyclists, if I was coming from another part of Canada, CAV groups, other veterans, we'd ride up there, singly, ones and twos, or in groups, up until an hour before the return of the remains and the family from Trenton as they went down the Highway of Heroes. And as we got into position, the police on the horses, the police on their bicycles, firefighters, civilians. At one point, a little 5-year-old girl pushed her way through my legs to try to get in to see when Trooper Brian Good's remains came home and his family escorted him to his rest. A little girl squeezed in between my legs. I looked around, where are your parents? Parents are behind us, she's okay. So I picked her up and I held her and I said, "What are you doing here, sweetheart?" She says, "I'm having heart surgery tomorrow at the Children's Hospital and I wanted to come here for the soldier's family." That energy at the other end of the Toronto end was different from Trenton and just as hard. What would happen was, night or day, cold, hot, rain, no matter what time of year it was when they brought them home, we'd be standing there in front of the coroner's office, the old coroner's office downtown Toronto, and they'd go by us and stop, and they'd all have to get into the vehicles because the remains would go down into the coroner's office to complete the contractual obligations for the federal government, while the family stayed outside with their escort. And we have escorts with us here today who brought home the remains of their friends. They'd be in their CAD pack with that red dust on their combat boots, still hurting inside their eyes and their heart. And with the mums and dads and the hour it took for them to do the official business with the remains in the basement, the families would walk along the line of all the greeters, all the people mourning, all the people in support of them, and shake their hands. And then from that point, they would be released to their final end and their final funeral. Those two fellows I wrote here today from the East Coast to get here with you, Earl only remembers the 22 PPCLI that were there when he was on his mission, and he can't remember the numbers of Germans, he can't remember the Brits, he can't remember the numbers of other, because our forces would stand on that repat on the other end every single time for every ally that fell. And then in Dubai, our staff would do the same thing, our forces would do another repat in Dubai. So I have a fraction of an idea what it feels like for those folks, but I can't imagine the pain and the suffering of those escorts and the family, especially those folks in theater that are standing with us here now, on a repat, in CAF, up in Kandahar, saying farewell to a comrade, the escort going home with the remains to be greeted by us, to be welcomed by us, whereas they stay in combat. They go back out to harm's way, knowing that every time they go outside that wire, and in fact all the time they're in the wire, our enemies want them dead until they leave the island, until they leave that ground, until they leave that combat zone. But the tragedy is, I want to say this loud and clear, just because they've left combat, too many of them are suffering and in pain here and now. When you do this ride, Lou DeVito, when you do this ride, you get this right, as we've done here, you see the energy around us, the positive energy. This is how we gather people together. This is how we get stuff done. Port Hope, all of you riders, veterans who served, I owe you a great debt. This nation owes you a great debt. You bear no shame for what happened in Afghanistan. You did your best for the people of Afghanistan. You did your best for the people of Canada. And by God, you're here with us doing your best today. Thank you all for being here.
Let's have one more.
About this day, tell me what it means.
I can't even give you the words for what it means. It means a lot to so many people, so many organizations. This is a welcome back for this group, but it's also a welcome home. Port Hope has a long history, of supporting all the needs that the military has. And this is in Memorial Park. We've got a beautiful day, and the number of people who are attending after a COVID pause is amazing. So for us, it's kind of like family get together again, and we are certainly hoping that this will continue year after year, and that the welcoming will continue to grow.
Well, tell me about this. What this day means to you as a veteran rider, as a veteran. Tell me about this day.
To roll down the highway of heroes at any time is a great honor. after this COVID lockdown of 2 years and to be here in Ontario where it all started, where Canada's National Highway of Heroes began, because every province now has its own provincial section of the Highway of Heroes. When I ride down the Highway of Heroes, I often try to imagine the pain and the suffering that our Silver Cross families and the comrades of those who fell went through. And when I go down the highway, I can sense it. When I'm at the Trenton end or at the Toronto end, in this case Port Hope, I can see the gathering of our communities to support those who've given everything literally for their nation. So to ride along that highway for me as a broken old soldier, I get benefit from it now by looking up at the people lining those bridges. I get benefit now from seeing people in the streets in Port Hope and across this country recognizing service and sacrifice. So for me, the Highway of Heroes and my journey here to Port Hope and the 2022 Heroes Highway Ride, this is a highlight of my year. This is an incredible energy, and this is what Canada is all about.